But we've got a fun guest coming up, right, Carrie?
Yes, and since Father's Day is coming, I think the perfect book that he's brought with him will be fun to highlight. His name is comedian Tom Shillue.
His first name is not
comedian. His name is Tom. He's a comedian.
Middle name.
Tom Comedian Shillue. He's here to share his new book about growing up in the 1970s with a traditional father. You may have seen Tom as the host of Red Eye with Tom Shillue on Fox News or on other Fox programming. And you might have also seen him.
Something's wrong with the teleprompter today.
Yes, the teleprompter did not scroll to meet what we need, unfortunately.
But Tom,
yes, he's also a singer. So Clay, you're not the only singer at the table.
Well, today you're the only singer at the table.
Hey, maybe Clay can sing with the Ragtime Gals someday.
Well, let's see. And we've
I've
got a
been
clip
called
of
that
this.
before.
Let's play a clip of.
Hey, 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 that's what I like.
I got a condo in Manhattan. Baby girl, what's happening? You and your ass and brother. Go on and get the clap down.
Pop it for a pimp, pop it for me.
Turn around and
drop it for a pimp, drop it for me.
All right.
That was impressive.
That was
What part do you
amazing.
sing?
I sing bass. I'm
you?
not really a bass, but I fake it.
Do you really sing bass?
I sing bass in that quartet, yeah.
Really?
Drop it for me.
Okay, so baritone. Oh, that's okay. That's good.
Yeah.
Okay, that was really impressive. Barbershop quartet is not easy at all.
You got to get the right notes. That's what you got to start with. How about Tina?
That's sort of, well, she had the melody. That was
Yeah.
a lot easier for her. But some of those
No, but the harmonizing.
some of that
you
stuff
gotta-
is
it's
well,
like a
you
jigsaw
know,
puzzle.
You're a Branson girl. You know how hard it is
Branson.
to do
Yep.
harmonies.
Yep.
So Tom, you wrote an interesting book about mean dads.
Mean dads.
Which I've always said I am. I pride myself in being one as well. But your relationship with your father was a tough love provider, right?
Yes, as all dads were. That's the thing, is that I wanted to do a portrait of the 70s. And when I look back, I'm telling funny stories. It's the idea is that there's more laughs in the book than lessons. I'm not kind of pushing any parenting advice on anyone. But if you look back at the way I was parented, I think you're going to laugh. And then maybe you'll take something away. Maybe we can take a little bit of that old-fashioned attitude and kind of drag it into the modern day.
And you believe that parents nowadays don't do it the same way, right?
Well, they don't. I mean, we live in a softer world, okay? And I feel like I got the best of both worlds, because I was in the 70s, and we had parents that were from the Depression era, and so they raised their kids. My mom was cheap. I was going to call it mean dads and cheap moms, but oddly enough, I thought it was more of a slur to call my mother cheap than my dad mean. So I left that off. But there's a lot of stories about my mother, saving money. She was part of what I call the militant couponing community, and she would just cut holes in every periodical we had because she was collecting coupons, trying to save money. She made soap out of bacon fat. She would stretch my dad's paycheck.
My
Thrifty moms. How about that? Thrifty moms.
My
And we should tell you that's the full title of your book is Mean Dads for a Better America.
Oh, funny.
Yes.
My grandfather used to cut coupons on Saturday mornings and lay them out and do 4 or 5 different grocery stores on a Saturday morning in the same morning just to make sure he got the better deal, the better.
Wouldn't buy anything without a coupon, right?
Nope.
It had to have some savings
5
attached
cents,
to it. Yeah.
5 cents.
Did she ever calculate the cost-benefit analysis of the labor spent on couponing versus the actual value
If
of
she
the
did,
nominal value?
I'm sure she did.
It would have absolutely. She was, I'm sure, not even paying herself minimum wage to save that much money for our family. But then she would come home from the grocery store after having spent all this prep time getting the coupons. Then she'd come home and she would go over her receipt and she would find mistakes. He gypped me.
Ooh.
He gypped me. And then she'd go back to the store.
But now that's when you start spending more money on gas than you lose at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
So it was interesting. You used the phrase "softer world," and I think some might argue that not everything in the world has become softer. I mean, we were just talking in our first segment about how the way we treat each other may not be as soft. Do you think? But I'll agree. Parents, in my opinion, certainly have gotten softer. Do you think that there's a correlation between the way parents parent right now and the way adults behave right now?
I do think so, because we had strict parents, but we also had a lot of freedom. The idea was that we had set hard, fast rules, and it was all based on morality and church. I'm Catholic. We would, go to church on Sunday. We learned all the 10 Commandments and everything like that. But then 90% of our life was spent out of the watchful eye of parents. So we could go out and kids were mean to each other. And we learned how to deal with bullies on our own. You had to stand up to bullies. You had to fight back. And so I think what happens is with the helicopter parenting of today, you have a little bit less discipline, but it's not as much about the discipline. It's the lack of freedom because the kids aren't out learning things on their own. So then when they hit adulthood, it is, I don't like to talk about, the word snowflake is not in this book anywhere because basically it's, I didn't want to talk about politics or all the modern issues, but I think the idea is that when you have that kind of tougher, hardline approach, the tough love, you grow up more prepared and you can deal with mean people. We live in a mean world. We have mean bosses, and I feel like I can deal with adults better now because of the way I was raised.
You have kids.
Yes, I have kids, and
How old?
I'm 11 and 7.
And
daughters.
And do you let them go out on their own at 11 and 7 into
the woods?
Yeah.
We had the woods. You didn't know what happened in the woods.
Exactly.
Right?
I think about that too, and I think about how much I love the fact that as a child, I had to be home when that street light above my driveway came on, and I was always so upset because mine came on later than everybody else's in the neighborhood. So I could stay out another 20 minutes, and everybody else in the neighborhood had to be home, and I was sitting there by myself. But the thought of letting my child do the exact same things in the exact same neighborhood that I grew up in.
No, it's not. You're not going to do it. But I'm saying that I think if we look back and, my mother used to lash me to a tree. I had a harness, and she would tie me to a tree.
That's a little meaner than me.
But not as
How
punishment.
did she save money in that? How did that help her save money?
She was trying to get her housework
No
done.
babysitters.
Yes.
That
That was it. She wasn't going to hire a babysitter or a nanny, so she would just lash me to the tree, and I played outside like a dog, But the thing is, nobody, people would drive by and they say, "Oh, look."
Because actually, my parents did the same thing.
Yeah.
But it was when we went camping because they didn't want my little brother and sister to go into the river and drown.
How old were they?
Like 6.
And how old
5.
were you?
This was like toddler age, like 3 and 4.
Yeah, 3,
Okay,
4,
3 or 4. I'm
younger.
getting 5 or 6. I don't
maybe
know. I
3 or
feel like
4.
you would get arrested for that nowadays, and I might be.
They weren't
okay
too
with
bright.
that.
The Sheffield family, they weren't too bright. They were going to go in the pond.
We were extra conservative.
You were
if
extra.
will.
That's for sure. Extra.
But the thing is that there's a lot of looking back and kind of laughing at the way I was parented. But also, you can take a little bit, I say a little tincture of the past, because I'm not going to let my kids run out until the streetlights go out in the Bronx. But I like to go into the park and let them away from us so we're not hovering. And I tell my neighborhood parents, I say, let them work it out on their own. I'm known as the work it out guy on the playground. So when the kids come crying, "Oh, he hit me," work it out. I tell them to go back and work it out. Because parents intervene so much that kids don't know how to solve their own problems.
So do you think that you are a mean dad?
I am a mean dad. I mean, I'm known as the other day, I got confirmation. Somebody overheard in my building another dad saying to their son, "Hey, knock it off. I'm gonna call Mr. Shillue." Like, he was
That would be. I get the same thing from my building too, and I gotta say,
Are you a mean dad?
Gonna,
Are you a mean dad?
Yes, very much so. I'm not going to tell stories on people, but I've had parents of other
do
children.
tell stories. Come
well, I'm
on.
not going to do it on. I'm not
I think
gonna,
you're doing it right now,
I'm
Clay.
not going to
Come
call
on,
them out on the internet, but I've had other parents of other children call me and say, "Okay, what do I do?" And consistency is a big part of it.
Yep.
Constantly knowing what the consequence is.
Consequences. That's
yeah.
the word.
That's a new word that
Yeah.
fell out of the dictionary about
Yeah.
15 years ago, and we got to get it back in there. But I'm definitely a mean dad.
Well, Judy Anderson on Facebook says, "I bet that Clay is a strict father," and Judy Anderson says, "Welcome, Tom. I love the Ragtime Gals."
Yeah.
look
Right.
at that.
It's my whole life is old school. It's dragging the old things into the modern world. And to me, the Ragtime Gals is a good metaphor for what I'm doing in this book. It's kind of like it's funny. It's not really taking myself too seriously, but I think that we could learn a few lessons after we laugh.
If you could pick a period in your life of a 2-3 year period to go back to because not because of your age or how old you were at the time, but how the world was in that little period, which would it be?
I mean, it had to be the teen years. There's a lot of about my dangerous teen years in here, and there was no sex. I was I was an abstinent kid, but not because I was. I was just trying to be a gentleman.
You were a loser, or
I
what?
was I was a gentleman. I would go on dates with girls, and I would make out. And I talk about in the book about what a glorious time that was, going on these dates and just making out with girls for all night. And just
never-
sitting
never
under the
did that for
moonlight.
me. Never did it. For me.
Clay, what are you talking about?
Okay, as the father of daughters, how does that
Is
make
that right?
you feel
Right,
now
right,
too?
yeah.
Well, look, I
Some schmuck like that.
they better
with
read
their
my
daughters.
book. These guys, if they want, I mean, look, we got some times, 11 and 7. But these guys, believe me, when they come over, they're going to have to come in and they're going to have to meet Dad, and I'm going to hand them a copy of this book.
And it's
Ooh.
going to scare them.
Oh, I hope so.
I'll be scared when I read it.
I think you should be.
Okay. Tom Shillue, Mean Dads for a Better America. I love the title. You can pick
Excellent.
that up anywhere books are sold. Thank you very much for
Thanks a
joining
lot.
us.
Thanks
Tom.
for having me, yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yep.